Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, and welcome to this session of EPHA's Access to Medicines Dialogues. We're back. We had our first 5 episodes from October through December last year. And it is an honor, a pleasure to be joined today by Professor Guido Rasi. We all know him thanks to his time at the helm of the European Medicines Agency, a very tough job. He has been through a lot at the helm of the agency, and he left the agency in November last year. So it is a pleasure to be joined by him today to exchange and to look back, but also look forward. Before we proceed, just to say that you can always ask your questions in the Q&A chat room. You can engage on Twitter using the hashtag A2M-Dialogues. The session, as always, is recorded, and you can find the previous episodes on the EPHA YouTube channel, because we've been expanding the conversation with these Access to Medicines Dialogues. And today with Guido, with Professor Rasi, we will look at COVID-19, obviously, the impact of the pandemic. Also, it was at the very end of his term at the helm of the agency. Look at the impact of the pandemic on the pharma government's dynamic, the impact on the regulatory framework, and of course, we are going to take advantage, if you wish, of his expertise and his tremendous experience in key positions, both on the national level, because I remind you, Guido Rasi was also for years on the board of the Italian Medicines Agency, and then he was also the head of EPHA, the Italian Medicines Agency, before joining the EMA. And EPHA is an important regulator, a sui generis regulator in Europe, as it goes beyond, let's say, the traditional marketing authorization of medicines, approval of medicines, and it also combines activities around HTA, health technology assessment, but also pricing and reimbursement. So Guido, thank you very much for giving me your time, giving me this opportunity, granting me this interview. I've had the privilege of being on the board of the EMA since June 2019. Therefore, I did get to experience Guido Rasi being the executive director of the agency. And for me, coming from the outside before joining EMA, I cannot hide it. I was also in the past quite critical of the agency when it comes to the relationship of the EMA with the pharmaceutical companies. I have now come to understand things quite better from the inside. But I must say that also during Guido's last year in office at the EMA, there have been some substantial and important steps and precedents in establishing a more transparent framework and building on the transparency legacy of the EMA, a legacy which has actually been constructed thanks to your leadership. Thank you for joining us. Tell the world, first of all, what have you been up to since you left the agency in November 2020 last year?
Yannis, nice to see you back again. That reminds me of important fight we had together at the same side for transparency and for other important things for patients. Well, now I'm back to my university. I'm have the chair of microbiology at the Tor Vergata University in Rome, and I'm leading a clinical trial center at a big Catholic hospital in Rome, trying to foster and to plant the seed of the research, clinical research culture, both in sponsored and mostly in non-profit trial, to be inclusive, to include all the population, and to plant the seed of doing with some regulatory culture in mind, because research is nice, but then you need a set of data that are meaningful and not to waste the volunteers that they join the science. So that is my most exciting thing, more than teaching microbiology, to be honest.
And how is life in after the EMA is a bit more relaxed, I guess. Correct.
Absolutely. In time of working hours, I disappointed my wife because it's still full days every day. However, the pressure and of the responsibility make you feeling light, make you feeling what I'm missing today. What should I do something? What I'm forgetting? It's a strange feeling, new, and of course it's much. I stopped take pills to sleep since 1 month now, after 9 years. So that's that to give you a flavor of what is the difference of working hard but working hard with pressure.
Quite telling. Speaking of pressure, let's go back a year and a half, and a year, let's say, since the start of the pandemic. You were at the peak, at the helm of the agency. What were your first thoughts when the pandemic started? Well, it was not a pandemic by then, in January and February 2020, but it was coming close to becoming a pandemic. What were your first thoughts from the regulator's perspective?
Well, we had with my senior staff, we had 3 thoughts, and I'm glad we reacted fast. We said, okay, we are coming out from a business continuity after 3 years because the move for the Brexit, and we say, so we are well trained. Let's put mindset that we will keep going the same. We don't revert to normal. Then we decided to have a massive homework because smart working from home, which was already, as I said, we were well trained because of the Brexit. We wanted to explore. We had enough regulatory tools to cover something that should happen fast, and that's why we were prepared to roll out the rolling review, which is unprecedented. We had also some resistance from the Commission. They say we had no legal basis, and my point was also the virus has no legal basis to do what it's doing, but it's better to be prepared. And the task force was there, and I said, well, okay, that's is a sign of the stars. I will never revert to normal before I go. That was the very fast reaction. I'm glad we were not caught by surprise in some way.
Guido, you mentioned the dynamic of the relationship with I see my connection is unstable. I hope I will not have a technological meltdown. But you mentioned the dynamic with the European Commission. Can you explain to us, for people who only see the EMA from the outside, what is this dynamic between the European Commission and the European Medicines Agency?
Well, the dynamic, like any body with different mandate, there is a dynamic, a lot of collaboration and some tension. The substantial difference: we are a delivery body, they are a compliance body, which means that the time for us has a different meaning than for them, and of course they are also in a more uncomfortable position because they have to trust us for the scientific part. They have to stick to the mandate and to compliance. So I do not envy them. However, the flexibility that we need, sometimes we expect them to be the champion for us toward the higher level and toward the parliament. Meanwhile, sometimes they are just a little bit a notary function to keep things like this. This, if I may say, the shortest way to describe the dynamic. Of course, there are a lot of very supportive people, and there are other a little more bureaucratic.
And in the context of the start of the pandemic, so the top priority, I'm guessing it was for the agency also to engage with the companies, right? To design clinical trials.
Yes, that is another another activity. That's why we put this task force and this rolling review, because we understood that the time would have been the dimension driving everything. And so we started to engage, if I remember, well, 68 potential producers for vaccine, for medicines, for the COVID, some repurposed medicines, some new, all the set of the ideas. And of course, that was a very intense way. We needed to triage, because the coming serious people, brilliant people, and any kind of bizarre proposal, and also trying to slip in something that really was not good for the patient and for treatment of COVID. So was quite intense. The good thing was to put a task force constantly, 24 hours a day. The third things I forgot, that was tremendously important. At that time, I was the chair of the International Coalition of the Medicine, the unpronounceable name of EPHA, which is yes, a coalition of 28 major regulatory authorities. And that made the difference, because we started to share data, and we decided, we helped each other to stick to the pressure. We had three kinds of pressure: political pressure, media pressure, emotional, and the company pressure. Everybody were trying to, in good faith or for interest, doesn't change the matter, was the pressure. The final result was the pressure to cut corners, basically, to allow them to take less data, to not to review everything, and to accept any kind of. We had long debate, but thanks to the good relationship and the big trust that we build in the year with the FDA, we stick together. We helped them for the political pressure. They helped us with the pharmaceutical pressure, and that worked out very well. We managed to put two very not crossing line, which were accepting nothing below 50% of efficacy for the vaccine, and nothing without a phase 3. And I think it was good, because that set the threshold and gave the motivation to everybody to reach the standard. If it would have been not together and accepted as of the beginning, whichever you present, we are desperate, we will take, we were not pushing enough. And so that I think was, for the management of the company, was one of the most robust tool, the one without legal basis, but with the moral suasion, the worldwide knowledge that we were all together in, that made us very strong.
Guido, I would like to understand, what is the leverage that the agency has in dictating the clinical trials design? Because based on the clinical trials design, it depends on what kind of and how solid the responses we get to our questions, the questions we have about the future of these vaccines or therapeutics. For instance, a lot of people are asking why asymptomatic infection was not assessed, or could it have been assessed? But it is important, looking back, to understand what is the leverage indeed of the agency in dictating the clinical trials design beyond COVID as well.
Yeah, no, it's COVID is like all the other. It's very minimal, very marginal, because that is a prerogative of the member state. And that is one of the highest weakness of Europe, because not only we cannot impose a protocol design, which is a pity, because the best experts are at EMA. From all the countries, we have the best. And in their own country, many times not the same experts are used to design a trial. And mostly is driven by the companies, or which at least they know what they have to accomplish, but there is no leverage. The only way we can influence, we cannot impose, we can influence, is the scientific advice. When they come and ask and they tell us what design they want to pursue to reach the point, to hit the target, many times we show them that is the wrong design. That with that design they will never reach the target, and we will never have data that we will feel confident to approve. However, it's a voluntary basis. They also have to pay for that, which I think is fair, and only the big company are paying. The small, medium, and the academia are not paying this advice. On the contrary, they are very encouraged to come. But it's a voluntary, and they can accept or not. So we have to show them if they follow our recommendation, since we know what data we want, and we know how they can reach. If they don't respect it, they take a risk. But it's marginal the number of study that has been started with our guidance, and there is no law.
You spoke of looking on the other side of the Atlantic during the Trump administration. I think there was open political pressure on the FDA, and you said, on the other hand, on this side of the Atlantic, here in Europe, there was a united front between you and the FDA when it comes to also rebuking the pharmaceutical pressure coming from the companies. Could you please elaborate on that?
Well,
what sort of pressure?
The companies were, for genuine fact, and for, of course, pursuing the logical of their interest, were saying we cannot promise we will have a new vaccine in short time above 50%. So they were scared not to reaching the target. Of course, and of course, they were keen to go for phase 2, the good phase 2 trial. So less people, in initial evidence, and then start to roll out and see if it does work. It makes some sense in an epidemic. I'm not saying that it's completely unreasonable what they were proposing, and a lot of governments were following also, were pursuing also this, because they were under the emotional pressure. We knew, however, that rolling out a vaccine like that, we were moving toward a failure, because the vaccine hesitancy and all the bad narrative of vaccine. Imagine a vaccine with less than 50% and with no robust data on safety would have been a disaster. Would have been a disaster. We have been strong enough and resilient enough not to get emotional on that. And also phase 3, we said in the reasoning with the FDA was, the virus is spreading all over the world. This will be faster to enroll people, and it was like that. And we were right. We say there is no substantial delay in this pandemic status, because every people say, look like Ebola, you took 8 years. Yes, because the outbreak is phasing out when you started to test the vaccine in the population. Here we knew we didn't have the risk, unfortunately. And that's why we felt comfort to say, no, phase 3, full stop. And we were right.
Indeed. And looking at now, we are in March 2021, you're no longer with the EMA, so you can speak more freely, I hope. But looking back, what about the political pressure on this side of the Atlantic? Personally, I must say that especially around Christmas, before Christmas last year, I felt that some policy makers and some politicians in Europe, they increasingly sounded like Trump, in the sense of being overtly provocative and putting the blame, or even putting blame on the agency, encouraging, to say it nicely, to put it nicely, encouraging the agency to speed up. What do you make of those statements, and where are we today when it comes to that specifically?
Well, as you know, I was blunt even in the time of. I'm not famous for being so diplomatic, but well, the pressure was not so bad in Europe until November. I agree. Also because we put in place a good communication, a constant communication. We try to keep low. Of course, when UK rubber stamped the first approval, that was really difficult. I was not there, but I would have been under the same pressure. And the politicians started to really blame EMA to relieve themselves inside their own countries. It's very bad. It's very bad. The difference is that the pressure that a politician can exert on EMA currently is only emotional, because differently from our colleagues at FDA, I remember Stephen Hahn was personally threatened. That has not happened with me. I never get threatened. I always get a respectful pressure to say why we cannot do, why we cannot. Was more emotional, more passionate, and I cannot be fired for that. And nobody can be fired at EMA for that. And also, a lot of the decision is coming from people sent by the member state, from the same member state that were putting us under pressure. But this in some ways diluting. And also, if the director, the executive director and the senior manager is calm, that pressure doesn't even go down to the committee. They can work without direct pressure. So it's a different time. Nevertheless, it's very annoying to have had this narrative against EMA. Yeah.
And is it damaging long term, or you think that it's something which is
can be damaging long term? But because if this narrative will be accepted, I see in Italy now, following very closely now in Italy, they try to say, we have to move to the emergency use. There are comparative things. I was doubtful about emergency use, but if I look back, glad we didn't have. Think about hydrochloroquine. FDA has to paddle back in 1 week. They lost face. Remdesivir, they paddled back in 1 week, and we are still with the initial conditional, because it still stands to the evidence. So at the end of the day, I'm not sure we really need an emergency use. Or we might need, but with a very, very, very careful description, what does it mean?
Yeah, so practically any deviation needs to be thought twice and thrice and multiple times.
Yeah.
What do you make of the scarcity in the supply currently when it comes to the doses? Is it a real scarcity or is it artificial? And
the vaccines?
Yes.
Well, if we talk worldwide, is real. The production is not up to the global. The local is a 50-50. Is a play of giving of making the customer, the too many customers satisfied, which ended up to make all the customers not satisfied. So the production has been less optimistic than everybody expected. Everybody has to scale up. However, some over-promising is causing some problem. And here I see a specific weakness of Europe. Europe is a client. US and UK have been partner. That makes a huge difference. You negotiate as a partner, you negotiate as a customer. As a customer, you have the leverage of paying more and full stop.
But Guido, what do you mean? Because the European Union also invested money. So it's
peanuts late peanuts compared to huge money at the beginning. US put 10 billions the 15th of April. 10 billions. We put some millions. And in fact, the country that are doing a little better, apart UK, that is a different story, is Germany, who put 400 millions on BioNTech to have a facility there. Late in September, earlier than others, but still late compared to April. And they put some.
What do you mean Germany is doing better?
Well, in terms of production, which doesn't translate in a spectacular campaign, but still they have a little more availability than the others. Rightly so. I mean, they put money to have a BioNTech, Pfizer manufacture on the territory, if I'm not mistaken.
So your assessment of the EU vaccine strategy, preliminary assessment, because I guess it's a bit too early for a comprehensive assessment.
Yeah, that's true. Assessment of the campaign, you mean, of the rolling out of the campaign?
No, of the EU buying, negotiating together.
Well, we have to put ourselves back when the negotiation happened, because with the after, we are all champion of the world to know what would have been the right thing to do. Now, my first consideration is, can you imagine if 27 countries were going to negotiate separately? A disaster. So if we are not happy with what we have, and there are a lot of things that are far from being perfect, we would have been much, much worse. So this is my first consideration, because I saw, look at the shortages, what happened, and we started to be a little bit aware that we had to cooperate to mitigate the shortages. And for the vaccines, it's absolutely the same. The negotiation came after an attempt of 4 countries to go together. There were an important, a strong will to negotiate basically with 2 vaccines, AstraZeneca and Sanofi, for commercial reasons, for local reasons. And gladly, they decided to go for a larger portfolio. The country sent to negotiate a different level of people, not necessarily the most experienced negotiator. Sandra Gallina, who was called abruptly in a field that she's not aware of, and nobody has any experience in negotiating pharmaceutical, because it's a member state prerogative. So everybody was put in the field and without not even knowing the rules of the game. That is in which situation things happen. Now, if we look back, the contract, very naive. I've been, as you said, in a different authority at EPHA. I was used to negotiate with the company, so I know what is behind, but for good reasons, I was not involved. From Italy, I understand that a very senior bureaucrat has been sent. Not even people from EPHA. I'm reasoning, because they know how to negotiate. And they know very well, by the way, they are also good. So that is what happened. So at the end of the day, we were in a difficult position because we are client. We had never a industrial strategy in Europe, a pharmaceutical strategy in Europe has never been developed. On the opposite, pharmaceutical has been kind of diminished and dismantled in Europe over the year. The supply chain moved elsewhere. So all these components that now we are analyzing made us in a very weak position. I'm trying now to put the puzzle together. I don't have a final. Maybe in 1 month I can elaborate better and putting other notion, because also a lot of things about the contract are not known.
Guido, thank you, because this was a very honest preliminary assessment. I know from my years in this field, I've talked to a lot of national negotiators. Even recently, someone told me from a big member state, we would sign a contract and 1 year later, we would look back at what we had signed 1 year before, and we would say, oh, we were stupid. But so looking back, in the sense that the industry is kind of always one step ahead, if I may say, or even on the national level, the national experts, and I fully agree with you that there's a lot of expertise and experience on the national level, but still this year we think that we get it right when we negotiate procurement of medicines, but 1 year later, in hindsight, we see that we, even as national negotiators, we could have done things better. So you're giving the Brussels the benefit of the doubt, or you are simply highlighting that this is a learning curve. And that brings me to my next question, which is something that I've been following throughout the years. Do you see this being a precedent or creating a momentum for Brussels buying medicines together, creating following up in the footsteps of Beneluxa, the Valletta Group, but now Brussels driven? What do you think? Is there the political appetite for that?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It would be good to pursue that path and to go much closer to have a joint. But the landscape and the epidemiology in Europe make it very difficult to. Let's say where there is a prevalence of diabetes or a prevalence of hepatitis C or versus rheumatoid arthritis, there is people can be more keen to stay to negotiate better what is more relevant for them, also in terms of having the size of the market. However, moving toward at least a common assessment, a common definition of the added clinical value, and the added clinical value is making the price closer to the value rather than to the market opportunity. That, of course, the industry will always pursue the market opportunity. When we create an efficiency, and we create a lot of efficiency in the system by streamlining the regulation and approach, but that has never been negotiated from any country level. Even the public money put in that has never translated in a benefit, only generated a more margin for the industry, which is only, the industry generally is flexible. What you get, what you negotiate. If you don't even negotiate, you can imagine they will chase you to give you your money back. That will never happen. You have to use leverage and to be always pressing.
And in Brussels earlier this year, around January, there was this narrative going around saying that had Europe accepted to pay more, we would have been served faster and earlier. We would have been earlier in the queue, let's say, if we had accepted, or that there was this obsession from Sandro Gallina and the negotiation team for very low prices. What do you make of that? Do you see any truth in that?
Well, I read a very interesting article these days about the difference of pragmatic countries, which are UK, Israel, and US, versus legalistic countries, which are us, more or less with some differences, but better. So the social perception from us is that the public money should be used at the lowest, and then the pharma industry is making too much profit, which is true, and therefore all the negotiation with this obsession. I think this the money we are losing by not investing and by not having the vaccines are much more than paying a little more, for example. However, the problem comes from a long way. We have to go back in the last 10 years, in the last decades, to see that we had never developed a strategy. If you don't have a strategy and you are a customer, and of course our public money, so you also have not to be too generous. However, this time the problem was the availability, not the price. And what you can negotiate, what US have done, is to put a lot of money, but also to negotiate actually the availability and the investment in US, which means employment and that. So it's not a matter of simply the price is one important component, and it's a key component for the availability and the accessibility. But if you have an industrial strategy, you can put more variable in the negotiation. That is my point.
Yeah, I keep hearing you, and I can't stop thinking of the HERA discussion in Brussels, the establishment of an EU BARDA-like agency. I don't know what you make of that, about HERA, and whether Europe should move in the direction of setting up or imitating or being inspired by the example of the US BARDA. Monsef Slaoui is currently advising Ursula von der Leyen. He was the head of the operation, which was US BARDA-driven public-private partnership. So should governments really invest a lot of money and be ready also to lose a lot of this money? Because in R&D, you don't always win. There's also a lot of failure.
Absolutely. There are a lot of failure. The problem is the leadership and the management. Only putting money is not enough. I was very close to BARDA and to Active, that was the consortium generated by BARDA for this. I participated I was the only European admitted there. By mistake, I think they invited me. They didn't know, because they were saying horrible things about Europe. So I kept silent and listened. And I learned a lot. I learned first, the way they select people, they choose the best. In Europe, we start to select a gender balance, a country balance, another 10 balances that we generally put together. We start to put the GDPR obstacles. We start to put all these things. We start already with 1 year discussion. That is the first thing will happen in Europe. Second, we have the session of the bottom-up approach of funding research, which is good, but should be a combination. If you go in a pandemic, and that is why R&D is still not putting money. We don't even have financed the monitoring system that we asked in May with ACDC. we are talking 60 million to put on in Europe, for all Europe to have a monitoring system about the performance of vaccine, about the sequencing. Now we know that the variant, we started to talk, think about the mutation, we said in May. So the machinery is like that. So if BARDA comes with the same rule we have here, of all the balance that we need to put, will not work. If you have, as you say, there's a risk, it's risky to invest the money, you have to put agility and the best mind, full stop.
Yeah. Are you optimistic that this is going to happen? Do you see a window of opportunity because of COVID-19?
I see that Europe is shaken by this. I'm optimistic about improvement. I'm not optimistic about really a deep change in things. About improvement, yes, I'm optimistic.
And this is, I want to go back a bit to your time at the agency. You faced a lot of battles, obviously. You had the pharmaceutical companies suing the agency very often. You had the European Ombudsman breathing down your neck on several instances. You had civil society, including myself, criticizing you for many different elements. But looking back, which was the hardest battle, or the one that you really look back at, you are reflecting about it?
Well, overall, I think I don't know if it was Brexit or the communication. The communication is so neglected, and the approach, the European approach, that you have to keep silent because you are a public body, or you have to do a communication that is when you read our 10 years ago, our communication to the public is irritating. I remember reply to the to parents of babies dying of cancer, of some drug being approved or not approved for good reason. I'm not challenging what the decision we take, but how we replied was, dear Mister, according to provision, number of provision, and followed by this with the 10 acronyms that the father, the baby was dying. So you should explain with a word that cannot consolate, but can make it think. So from this to that, there is a gap. Was the hardest battle. I have not won. I hope I planted the seed to move in that direction. And I have a lot of faith in you and the organization like yours, because you are that complementary, reaching out, and also not reaching out to explain to the other, but also to explain to us where we are failing. But that's, I think, the battle I lost. Brexit, in some way, organizationally, I won. We lost everybody by the Brexit, but as an organization, went well, but was a nightmare. Was the biggest nightmare of my tenure. Yes.
And very
the battle I lost is that one, the communication.
Well, I must say that the EMA has improved tremendously in recent years, and your communications also now we see with these public webinars that the agency came really center stage to explain to the people the details of the approvals around the vaccines for COVID-19 and the therapeutics. I want us to touch upon the issue of EMA and pharma. What is the dynamic between, and what is the EMA in the eyes of the industry? You've been driving the agency for many, many years, also on the national level at EPHA. How does pharma see institutions like the EMA or the national regulator?
Well, it's interesting because in some way, EMA being out of the pricing, the value, and the final marketing is kind of safe. Industry is doing their job. Big industry understand that if they don't bring enough data, they will not go, and they have money and power enough to generate the data they need. That was true until a couple of years ago. Now with the new the personalized approach, the advanced therapy, the paradigm will change, and so we will go back to discuss which evidence to be generated can be accepted. So that is restarting a dynamic that was gone. The industry is surprisingly that the industry is sometimes more conservative than us, but because when we propose some change, they claim they want to change, they want to have more flexible. Then we propose some changes, and the regulatory people of the industry say, no, I have to change my database, I have to change the form, I have to change this. So it's a very schizophrenic environment. And but I don't see a tremendous tension between industry and EMA. I think the tension is moved at another level with the access. And in fact, you can see, I observed this 4 years ago when I read that the big money that industry were putting for, let's say, marketing were in the healthcare, in the doctors' organization. Doctor organization are getting zero now. Everything is on the patient organization now. It means that they don't think that the prescriptor is a problem anymore. Also because is the problem of accessing something that is new and not proven enough. The advocate now should be the patient directly. That is creating social tension. And EMA is touched by this, but marginally. It's a tangent. Of course, when you are in the process, the single company is pressing to have the best interpretation, the largest indication. That's of course is always, but it's not substantial pressure. And you know, as you said, we are sued by the company every month. We have, because what is frustrating is that the market access, the access to document, 99% is industry spying or checking industry if you have done some privilege to the competitor rather than we are a kind of controlled more by the competitors than not for good reasons. It's not ethical, it's not noble, yeah. But de facto we are so controlled by the competitor that we are in a different kind of pressure than from the next level, which is the access.
Guido, I will never forget that during my induction meeting at the very beginning, when I first came to Amsterdam at the temporary building, actually, for you to train us and to brief us as to what we should do as members of the board. You said something which I found very, very interesting and important, obviously, that we as regulators, we shouldn't get to a point where whatever we authorize, anything that we authorize, nobody can afford it. So what do you think, what do you make of this debate, the access to medicines debate, and the impact of the EMA's decisions down the road? Whatever the EMA decides and authorizes has a direct impact on the life of the HTA, the pricing and reimbursement authorities, et cetera, and of course, all the way to the patients. How do you feel about that statement? We shouldn't authorize, we shouldn't get to a point where whatever we authorize, nobody can afford it.
Yeah, that's my vision was, and still is. Of course, you have to articulate and to fine tune continuously. But the problem is that I don't think it's a good idea if EMA steps out of the benefit risk, because that should be unbiased. However, cannot be an isolated exercise. There should be before a way to define what is the goal of the two different communities, namely us as regulator and HTA or payer, that community, to generate in parallel the evidentiary standard that are necessary to the two communities. At the end of this, there should be a monitoring of the outcome of the approved new drug, because we need to reassess continuously. We cannot stop assessing. We have to go in a sort of rolling approval forever. That will enable to maybe to fix a prices outside of this. But if you can do this in a continuous circle, you can very fast capture if you are really reaching the value of the new intervention instead of just the price. It's more important the overall value that you give, which is many times is overpriced and sometimes is underpriced. And in fact, some good options are going out of the market to favor other. Look at that, some generics and some other unsuccessful marketing and successful story. So there should be really a coordination above this. We cannot go that we stop something. We cannot stop looking after something we approved after the approval. We should be responsible of the benefit risk assessment forever. And that should come in a planned, a continuous way to give back the value.
That's clear, but I wonder how will this be achieved and how is this done in real life, in the sense of we see that payers, also HTA bodies, are often unhappy. They keep stressing, they keep talking about this weak evidence, high prices conundrum. How do we know that once a product is on the market, it is very difficult to revisit a decision, a marketing authorization decision, but also a pricing and reimbursement decision. So I wonder, how do we address this increasing uncertainty, which we seem to be taken for granted?
Well, the uncertainty, I don't think is more than used to be. It's more evident because the price is becoming unaffordable. That is the reality. The problem is that the healthcare system are not ready for this change, are not ready to monitor. When you give this kind of intervention, you need a much longer observation. If you do a gene therapy, you need a lifetime observation, and the value you have put at the beginning might change for better or for worse, or for a disaster. You don't know. So you need to have really a paradigm shift, a new model, a new business model, a new payment model, a new healthcare delivery system model. There is no fixing of only one segment of the whole story, and that's why I'm a little bit worried, because EMA did something, promoted the joint, the parallel assessment. Is one thing that bothered me a lot is the post-authorization effective study. We never imposed one. We never. Because the countries are reluctant. The same country that are unhappy when you get the approval with what they call uncertainty. We are certain about the benefit risk, but nobody is pressing to have all the markers to see who really benefit. And no one is really putting a fast, rapid monitoring system to see the performance of the innovation.
Why is this happening, in your opinion, from the member states' perspective? Why are they hesitant?
Well,
or unwilling?
Because there is no one is really grasping what is needed, because there are a lot of people, and still there is this approach of the price of the medicine. This is something that in 5 years will be gone, is the cost of treating a disease. I remember my first arguing at the EPHA, because I was imposed to detach something. To give you just an example, I had a ceiling for the protonic pump inhibitor, which are now all generic, and was like in Italy was 60 million a year, and I couldn't go above that ceiling, still having some surgery for gastric ulcer or cancer. So and I went to the Minister of Finance. I say, okay, I'm very proud. I saved 2 million of this, and you are very, very happy that you spent 15 million in surgery.
Yeah.
But the books were perfect.
Yeah. No, I understand.
So this is a system problem.
And to wrap up on the EMA's funding, on the public health activities of the agency, because the agency does have public health activities, for instance, pharmacovigilance and others.
Yeah.
Do you think that they should be? Do you think that they should be prioritized? Do you think that there should be more money? Do you think there should be more commitment coming from member states and from the Commission in this direction? Is it okay if those activities are funded by industry fees?
Well, yes, I don't see a problem, because there are boundaries. The company pays money upfront. They don't know the outcome. They have no power on the outcome, and the remuneration of any side of the agency, and also of the member state coming from the agency, is fixed and granted. So the outcome is so diluted that it's not really impacting. Also, the salary of the people are according to the staff regulation, and it's a balancing budget, meaning that in 1 year we get zero money, the Commission will pay everything. So I don't have any problem with the financing, and we are in a good situation. It's flourishing, because there is a lot of margin, and the company never questioned that we cross-subsidize. We subsidize the small and medium enterprise with the money of the big, and they never question this. So I think that system is working. What is not working, that we cannot put the resources, human resources, balancing the growing request, the growing workload, and the growing budget that we generate ourselves. So that is the sticky point, is the human resources. We have no autonomy in that, and that is creating a lot of problems.
Thank you so very much, Guido. I have one very last question. What's next on your plate? And any involvement in Italian politics or European politics? Is it something too early to talk about, or it's not even on your mind?
No, politics. I promise my family that I will not go in anything public apart the university for at least 1 year. Okay. So next November we can start to discuss, but Italian politics is not very attractive. European politics, well, I'm not very keen, but you never know.
Thank you so very much. Ladies and gentlemen, join us in April. Well, first of all, for a virtual round of applause for Professor Guido Rasi. Thank you for your insights, always a pleasure. And join us on the 15th of April for the next dialogue on AMR and developing antibiotics. Thank you so very much, and see you soon. You can always watch our episodes on YouTube channel. I encourage you to visit the EPHA's YouTube channel, where you can find all of the previous episodes. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure.